Chish wuchin khasati takat yuhan wasa ya ʼuyeeydzigéi ya tlek tehin ʼhuaach kingisti ʼéináx ye owa ʼhuaach ladzée ya Lingít yuchatangis dultóowu tlel ladzée ʼhuaach wachas Lingít ʼéináx aya yuchakigitan aqa tlel kegwch ladzée ye owa ach tuwáa chatsu gwell chatlak aadé tuwáa tank we gled chatun de tani tin tlachlidzi kanax chakut ataya Lingít gwell Lingít tun de tani tin kanax chalta katat yan qaya ti gulchish. I heard that from King Yeasty, he used to say, people say Lingít is really hard, but Lingít is easy. He said, if you just stay in Lingít, it's easy. But if you're always thinking about it and with your English brain, it gets really hard. But it's because they're just totally different things. And it's totally okay to have different things in the same consciousness. Like you're going to have these two ways of thinking. One of the things that was asked was about like these two, talking about like understanding somebody. And I guess there's two different ways that I would think about it. So we're going to look at a couple of different verbs and how they work. So to look at these verbs, we're going to go to the verb database, which let me pull that up. So the first verb is ach. So we're going to start with this one. And we'll talk about when you would use this and when you wouldn't. So this verb root, ach, I would say means to listen and to make noise. It's either one of those. And so most verb roots have a couple of different, or a lot of them have different meanings. And so you could see there's to hear something, to hear a voice, to listen for something, to listen to something, to play a musical instrument. And then we get the understanding, and this is the one we're going to come back to be able to hear something, to listen to, take the time to listen to someone, and to listen to someone or to obey them. There's also a couple of other ones like to mishear something, and then there's one which is to hear someone's voice and to recognize it as them, which is kind of cool. But so if we put the thematic prefix ch on here, this means, really I think it comes down to hearing their language. So this is what ch does in this case. Just like when we say ʼéináx, if you say Lingít ʼéináx, you're talking about doing a verb in the Lingít language is usually what you're going to sort of translate that as. So here you have ʼhuaach, I understood. So here, if you want to say, I understood you, ʼhuaach. And then I didn't understand you would be ʼhuyeeydzigéi. But this means the words that you said, I did not understand them. Like, especially as a Lingít learner, they'd be like, you said something, I don't understand that language, right? And so this has more to do with, I think, hearing the language that's being said and just really sticking on that level. Like, I don't know that word. I don't know that verb. I don't know how that verb was put together. I don't understand the language. And so I would say it's pretty closely associated with language. And it could have to do with someone's a speaker you haven't listened to before. They speak maybe in a Yakutat dialect or something maybe you haven't heard before. But that is this one. And then there's all these different ways to understand it or to conjugate the verb. And then we go down to ʼéináx. And for this one, we have to understand. And then there's also to be intelligent. And this one would be like, I understand the words you're saying, but I don't think I understand what you are saying. And so this is more at a comprehension type of level. So if someone's using, for example, I might understand all the words that they're saying, but it might be tied to some sort of cultural thing. Like they'll say, I was just reading one the other day, I can't remember what it was. Um, but if someone says, I'll just go along as a baler, you're like, okay, I know that's what they said, but I don't know what they mean by that. But if you know the Duk story, that's what he said when he went on that boat. And it's used, these are proverbs in Lingít. So someone might say something, and in this case, you'd say, "Atesh achdaya kushuske," or they're trying to explain this is like the concept. I don't get the concept. And so that is the difference between these two, is being able to understand the language that they're using or be able to understand the concepts.
Okay, then. How do you say nobody understands you?
Well, okay, so this, again, you could do it both ways. So you could go this way. And for that, I would use a fourth person. So you could take this. We'll take this as our model. And let's grab, okay, so if this is our model, let me make this a little bigger.
Can I try it first before you tell me the answer?
Yes.
Okay, I would say right there, nobody understands you. First of all, I'd say tlél sa, and then I'd say eh. Oh boy, I'm trying to put a duh or tlél sa ʼáach or tlél ka ʼáach or tlél ka ʼáach. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so I think sometimes we do see speakers using like kesh asa for nobody's doing the thing. Um, but I think another way to approach this would, so if we pull this apart, so if we look at this and we say, what are the parts here? We have y, whoops, y, 0, 0, ah. And so this is the object. This is the thematic prefix, conjugation, conjugation, subject, classifier. So then what I would want to do here is use a fourth person. And so it becomes people. So then I would want to change this to I, and I'd go over to here and change that to d. And what we find is like the patterns are there, and so sometimes that's when the color coding could maybe be helpful, because that's blue. This one is the pink. This one is gray, gray, red, purple, and then brown. Because this hopefully kind of trains us to be looking for the blue and the red. Like those are the things we could change. And to change who's doing this, then those are the parts. And then the next part is understanding like how the contraction is going to work. So if I took this same one, I say, okay, well, let me replace that one that I had with this one. So now I'm going to change this to I, and I'm going to change this to d. And so what I should have there is I would have tlél, I, ḳau, du, ach. People don't understand you. And so this is where I think the fourth person really comes in handy to sort of talk about when things happen and when things don't. And now this is saying like basically if you said this, like I would have to think about it. Like does this mean I say stuff wrong in Lingít and you're saying like I need to work on my pronunciation because people can't understand what I'm saying? Or does this mean like there's not enough people who know Lingít and the Lingít I'm using is very complex and then or is it subject matter that they haven't talked about before? And so if that's how this one would work, but then if you're saying you talk about things that people don't understand, like conceptually, like you're always talking about these things that people don't know about, so then you would take, and also, like I would probably go back to this one too, and I would reach for this one actually. So here we have ʼáyáx, they understand regularly. Because the second sort of question, I guess I grabbed a perfective. So the difference here between these, so here's ʼáyáx, and then we'll just grab these two third-person examples. So if you said this, and you could say tlél, and you'd say ʼéináx. So the difference between these would be they spoke, and in this single instance, they didn't understand. So this person spoke, and this person didn't understand. This one would be like they never understand. They regularly do not understand. So it kind of depends on also what we're saying. Like, are we saying this is a one-time thing? When you spoke, people didn't understand. Or is this a regular thing? Because if it's a regular thing, if you want to do the sort of the never part, sometimes an imperfective can work. So if we look at the verb and we see under imperfective, like, well, this one, there is no imperfective of it. So we had to grab that perfective, right? And so this is where it gets kind of interesting because we have a habitual mode, and the habitual mode would be every time. So then you could say, ʼéináx. Whenever you talk, every single time you talk, I understand you. But you could also come down to here and say, ʼéináx. When you talk, I regularly understand you. And there is a slight difference between those. But what gets wild and what we got to just sort of remember is when we do the negative habitual, we would say, I haven't understood you yet. And that's different than like never. So here I would say, I haven't understood you yet. And this could be you're working with an advanced speaker and you're just saying, I haven't understood what you said yet, but I feel like I'm going to. So you feel it's probably going to happen, you think.
Hey, Lance,
Oh,
this particular instance goes like this. Nobody ever understands you or your ridiculous sayings or your tests. It's in that context. The goalie is talking to the coach, and the coach says, I'm thinking about sitting you down. And that came to this point. No, the player says, nobody understands you or your ridiculous tests.
yeah, okay. So
Nobody ever understands you. That's
I,
what he said.
I think you'll end up with this one. So now here, it's going to get a little longer on us. So here we've got, oops. So you've got ʼatudli.átk. So there's a couple things I think that's going to happen. So you're going to add tlél in front of it, and that does need to make it go a little bit. Well, I think it's already there. Like that might go long, and that's probably going to go like that. Um, so now we have a little bit of a different structure. So if we look here, we do have, and then we got to come back to the verb here. So if we go back to here and we look at the theme, en da ya kushusuke, for en to understand, comprehend. But how would we now attach that to other things? So here, you could change this to ka, keshkada keya kushusuke. Now you would need to specify, and if it's iyukatangi, would be your words, the things that you say, your language. And then there's this other thing, which I don't know if we've talked about. Um, what is it? I think that's how you spell it. Do we know what that is? Da'itnaku. Has anybody ever heard that before? So that would be your actions, and this would be your words. And so this is like, and you could combine them. Nobody understands the things that you do and the things that you say. But I guess we got to kind of tease out like what the English is saying too. Like people don't understand why you say those things and why you do those things, or because and if it's someone like arguing with a coach, then it could be something totally different because it could be the way you're instructing us or the way you're commanding us. So you have those two verbs to utilize, which are also like advanced Lingít is one of the really fun things about it is you really start to get into these fine grains of sand for Lingít. So for example, there's saying stuff, there's talking, and then there's this verb right here. And so this is where you might use something with a perfective, right? And so we see for the subject to instruct the object. So for example, like the way that you're coaching us, right? The way you're showing us how to do this thing, and you could say, you could also say, well, I think you can come back to the understanding verb, right? If I just use myself as an example, in one-off situation, Teshachdaya kushuske aadé chat shukiya. I don't understand the way you're instructing me to do that. And then you could name what the thing is too. And so this could be something, but this would be like we're on the ice in a practice and the coach is showing us how to do something. And what I'm critiquing here is the way that they're showing me how to do that thing, right? The other option you would have would be to command someone to do something. So, and then it kind of depends on what we're criticizing here. So there's this ʼatk verb, which we know as like try, to attempt. But there's this other way, which is to give someone an order, to command them. So here, it would be probably this one, right? So you have to give orders, to command, instruct. Oh, so you still have a subject and object. You have this ʼat, which is kind of frozen in there. So you'd say, ʼat ha kiya ʼakuye, aadé ʼat ha kiya ʼakuye. So both of these would have the aadé. And so it kind of depends on if you're saying like your speech, the way you're talking, your behavior and actions, the way you're instructing us, or the way you're commanding us. So it kind of depends. Like, I guess if you're going to criticize someone, you got to be pretty specific in Lingít.
So are you saying you go aadé, verb, you verb, yay, the way you give orders,
Yeah.
or aadé, ja, yay, you ja, yay, the way you instruct?
Yeah, and so let me put these both in the notes. So here's this one, and then let me grab the second one. And what I'll do is, so I have these, let me push the stuff down. So here you have, this is your verb, ʼatudli.átk. And then there's two changes that need to happen to these. One is I need to change the subject and the object. So without pulling it apart, I could say, oh, they're doing this to us. And so this goes kia, right? So this is the second person. This is how you do a second person perfective with a thematic and a zero group classifier. ʼatudli.átk. This on its own would be you commanded us to do something, right? You were bossing us around. And then for this one, this goes to I, and this goes to iya. And so what's neat about these two is you have iya and iya. So even though there's a bunch of stuff there, when you get to that part that changes, in this case it's identical. So now we have you, whoops, this would also be ha, sorry. So this would be you instructed
Zach,
us,
what you're saying is that
and this would be you commanded us. So then the next step would be aadé, ʼatudli. There's a vowel in the classifier, so now this needs this suffix. And then this one, aadé. And then there is this sort of like extra bonus move, which is when you put the ye on something, it will flatten out the vowel. Aadé ḥuyeeydzigéi. So this would be the way you commanded us, the way you instructed us.
Wow.
Yeah. And those are complicated concepts, right? Because it just, but it also comes down to like if you're translating like a situation or something or writing some sort of story, what you have to think about often in Lingít is what exactly are they saying? Because in English, sometimes you have these wide-ranging sort of phrases, and in Lingít, it's like you have to pick what the thing is that you're talking about.
Okay, so then you're talking about a certain tense when you say aadé, atha, kia, aguye. Okay, so you can go to the other tense where you're always commanding us and apply the same aadé, atha, ye.
Yeah, so if you use here's ʼshukajeich, so you'd have that one. We'll put these ones on there too. Oops. And we got to go up and grab the second one. Oops. Not ach. So these get a little bit more complicated. And so, yeah, and again, this comes back to, am I criticizing this one thing that you said to us or this one time you commanded us, or is it, this is regularly. So this critique would be really all-encompassing. So here, you change this to ha, and this would be, okay, we gotta go to the conjugator for this one. I think it would be kia with an I, but I want to double check that. So we're looking for repetitive with a thematic, and we're looking at, in this case, na conjugation and Oh, sorry, this is 0. That's why. Because you have to go down to na, because a na repetitive is the only one that's plus I with the classifier. Okay, so you'd still have kia. Okay. And then this one, because this is a repetitive na, you're going to have u, a plus I classifier, and a k at the end. So this will go to that. And I should have kept that. Okay, there. So then same, if we want to change this one, you would have ha, we would have aadé, ha, ḥuyeeydzigéi. Yeah, and you wouldn't need to put that end vowel on there. Okay, those were big questions.
You would need to do what?
It wouldn't be ḥuyeeydzigéi. You wouldn't put the I on there because there has to be a vowel in the classifier. If there's a vowel in the classifier, you add that suffix. It's called the attributive suffix. It's always low. And so in this case, a positive perfective has a vowel in the classifier. This, because it's a n conjugation repetitive, it does have a plus I, so it's got a vowel in the classifier. But if there's no vowel in the classifier, which is the case here, so you could see the classifier is 0, then you don't have to add that letter I at the end.
So, and you're doing that because these verbs are possessed by the other verb understand?
It's just the rules with aadé, yeah.
Oh, okay.
This won't fall under that relational thing. It's different. And so
Okay.
just because you shifted the verb into this kind of it's a bit of a unique mode to say like aadé, verbi, yeah, or tlél aadé. Like those, they'll just have their own. They'll say, I'm free of that sort of thing, and you're not as closely tying those things together grammatically.
Okay. Gonna teach.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm gonna teach you, hon. Any other questions? We gotta get through our story. Gotta see what happens.
I had a question about when we would use the perfective in our stories versus when we would use the imperfective. I feel like the stories that we've looked at kind of go back and forth.
Mm-hmm. They do. I would recommend just sticking with perfective, uh, but I would say the hint seems to suggest like there's some major significant thing that's going on. It's shifting the story like into a different time frame. Like you'll say like, so, and there's different ways that Lingít does that. Like you might say waahaa away. That's a really important thing. So like being able to tell stories in Lingít, I think it's really important to be able to tie some things together. And this is done through both the verb modes that we use and also with these just kind of these storytelling cues. So you could say ʼaqa away, and you could say ʼéináx away, or you could say ʼitdach away, and you could say ach away, and you could say waahaa away.
What do all of these mean?
Yes, and so I'm going to talk about what these mean and how you would use them. And these are more sort of like we need to jump ahead in the story a little bit or tie some things together. And so this is and then, and this is following that, and this is after that, and this is because of that, and this is at some point. So usually when we're telling stories, like we got to set it up. Like here, I was driving to the store the other night and I went inside. And now I need to sort of jump ahead because I'm not going to tell you about like, it wasn't important what I was shopping for and which section I went to first. but the important part is I ran into this person and something happened, right? And so, and when you're telling sort of bigger stories, like if your story is about this time uh, we took a road trip and we ran out of gas and like a bunch of just wild stuff happened to us, we might use some of these things. And so these are sort of transitional things within your story. So this is just a pretty straight, like this happened and then this happened. This is sort of saying these things happened. It was important that we sort of talk about the sequence, like this thing happened and then this thing happened. Or like we could say aqa away sa and only then, right? Like I couldn't find my keys. Finally I found my keys and only then could we get out of there, right? And so it's like learning how to tell stories in Tlingit, it's important to like use these little markers. They really help you do a lot of stuff. Um, so this is just sort of a straightforward, some point later, this other thing. This would be after this thing, this other thing happens. There's a little bit more of like a sequential thing going on. ʼéináx is a little bit more like this thing has a little bit of cause and effect or something like that. And then ʼatudli is very much like this is why, right? So this is why this other thing. This is why we're mad at them. They messed up our drawing or whatever the thing is. And then this is how you do like basically a time jump to say like we went to the beach and then at some point later this thing happened, which sort of says like we were there for a while. These things were going on. And then ye adayaka, and as opposed to ye yawaka and ye ayausaka. So saying something specific to someone. So this is when the words matter. Like these words, and for this one, it's like this is a very important part of the story. It's what it seems like. Like because these words were said, it sort of like really pushes the story in this whole other direction, right? And so there seems to be something about the immediacy of what's being said here. That's what it seems to me. And then this said a certain thing, and then this was said a certain thing to someone. So these are all slightly different, but very, very similar. And then when we say du'in a ḳuyeeydzigéi, they told it to them. So there's some differences here, right? So you could use this one for go tell your sister it's time to eat, right? And you could use this one to say, go tell your sister I said to knock it off. Day away is exactly what I said, and you are carrying my words over there to them, right? And so just in terms of like how to use these, and again, I think they really help with being able to converse in Tlingit, and a lot of conversation is storytelling, right? Let me tell you what happened. Oh, I saw this person, and they said this thing. And so this would be, they told me about the potlatch that happened. This would be, they told me at the potlatch, this person said this exact thing, these words. Because in Tlingit, words are important. They're very, very important. And so my recommendation is to just use the perfective now. If it already happened, just use a perfective verb and don't try to move back and forth yet.
Okay. Also, if we're using the Nation Story verb book, how can we tell what conjugation the verbs are?
Oh, that's a great question. So if we just go here, so here we have dasa ʻitutwuhi. So we should start to recognize wuhi, perfective, wuhi, perfective. Shtekatkayu kutigi, shtut anashich. This one is a habitual. right? And so I think that would be a good exercise just to go through this whole thing and sort of name them. Does anybody know what this one is? ʼatudli.átk.
Perfect.
That's perfective.
Perfective. Let's see. Sigóo adu yasa ʼatudli.átk. This is an imperfective that has been turned into a dependent clause. So this is a relational imperfective. What about sigóo?
That's perfective.
Perfective, right? And so aadé yan hastuch uwatsu. We wouldn't write it this. We wouldn't have this. This would all be written as one word. Tuwáa, and that would be short.
It's another perfective.
Perfective. What about yeguchtachun?
That's future.
Future. Ḳadeek, ḳadeek.
Is that imperfective?
Yep. Keshkedeek. Negative imperfective. Udachunch.
That sounds habitual.
Yep. Udachun. Perfect.
Perfective.
Udidlachun.
Imperfective.
Well, it's got wa.
Perfective.
Yep. Udlachun. Lots of perfectives in here. ḳuyeeydzigéi, perfective. ḳuyeeydzigéi, perfective. ḳautliq'uach, ḳautliq'uach, perfective. ḳuxaha, perfective. ḳuq'uaxaha, future. We got to put K in front of it, so. ķuq'uaxaha. ḳaduteej,
Imperfective.
imperfective. ķeqateej, or ķeqateej.
Imperfective.
Not an imperfective.
Imperative.
It's an imperative. It's a command.
Do you need the K? Is that just because it's in the verb, the K in front?
I don't know. I would guess it's a different verb, maybe. Yeah, that's unusual. A ḳautliq'uach. That's perfective. That Nick is wrong. Okay, that's a good exercise. It's a really good question. Anything else?
So how would I tell, like, if I was going to be using a future, how would I know whether it needed a yay or a K, or would I
Yeah,
just kind of flip a coin?
that is a very good question. Do you have any verb that we can, well, like if we looked at this, so ḳaq shayi, a ḳautliq'uach. So this is perfective. It's closed and it's long and high. That means the only thing that we could tell from this is that it is a non-zero. It's non-zero. So that's the only thing we could tell right now. So the next step is to say, well, I want to use this in the future. So what you do as we're going through, like at some point we're going to have to try and document all of these verbs so you can look at the theme and know whether you're going to, because if it's ga, you got to put K in front of it in the future, just like this one. And if it's qa, then you have to put ye in front of it in the future. So now we're going to say, okay, let's go see if we could find it in Lear. So we're looking for teich, which might be under teich, for wringing or twisting. Let me go find it. Hold on. So we'll go to TEI, and we'll start there. And now we've got, okay, so there's, looking for an L classifier. ʻatudli.átk, ʻatudli.átk, ʻatudli.átk. And so it does not give us the conjugation prefix. So sometimes there'll be like a little note over here. It'll say N or G or underline G or 0. And that was marking the conjugation. So it's not there. So it's this one, to twist it. So the other thing is we could go into here and just see, is it in here, or is there another teich verb that seems like a similar concept, and we could sort of take a guess and say, okay, this one is na, so I think this other one would be.
So as we add classifiers or thematics, does the conjugation usually stay the same?
Can you say that one more time?
As we add or subtract classifiers or thematics or other pieces of our verb recipe, does the conjugation usually stay the same?
It usually does, yeah.
Okay.
And then, but there's some cases where it doesn't, and then there's some cases too where, like for example, if you say ayateen, to be able to see something or to see something generally, that's g conjugation, so GA, no underline. But then if you say ausateen, that's g conjugation. So those switch. They're like opposites of each other. And those, like I think you could do probably a deep dive into that, because like awashat, that's g as well, to catch something. But to hold on to something, which would be aushashat, is g conjugation. So I would say generally yes, but then you'll find these ones that will be exceptions. And so now this verb is in here. So even though specifically wringing a neck isn't in here, winding something, it's the same verb. So now if it's na, we know it doesn't have to have anything in the preverb in the future. So for this one, I would say ʻakaguchlat'eich. They're going to wring those chicken's necks.
Okay. I think that's enough that I can find what I'm looking for.
Okay.
I have my story. I just don't, I'm working on putting it into Lingít now.
Wonderful. And those are big steps. We're taking big steps here. Okay. So, aadé ʻatudli.átk, the way this person felt good. Okay, so the loon helped him, got his vision back. That gets us to here. And there's no sound. Okay. Well, that doesn't really work. That was what I want. Where does it go now, though? Can you all hear it?
Back.
Fake.
Hasi. Okay. Well, I think for now it's going to have to play through my computer into here, so it probably doesn't sound as clear as usual. No. Let me try one more thing. Blank. Yeah, I think it's going to work for me. Sean.
Nook.
Okay, we'll have to do it that way.
ʼatudli.átk Nook. ʼatudli.átk Nook.
Jesus.
What's next?
ʼatudli.átk Nook.
Dultóowu.
ʼatudli.átk Nook.
Nook.
Dinuk.
ʼatudli.átk Nook.
What is Yesu?
Now.
Is it now or is it more thus?
It's like now. Yay is like thus. And what is dudot?
Him around.
It could be around them, yes, but it could be on one other thing. I guess it could be two other things. Around them and about them and
Their body.
their body. So I'm going to say his body. And ʼxuimdlinuk is a bit of a challenging verb. And so this would be,
ʼatudli.átk Nook.
it might be high. And this would be like he was like checking his pockets or whatever. He was just like feeling around his own body. And this is going back to the formerly blind person who now can see.
ʼకేqa gunastíisiúr saqáiw kaqait. ʼkéqa gunastíisiúr saqáiw kaqait.
Yake.
ʼkéqa gunastíisiúr
Okay.
Ega.
Okay, it sounded like pesa.
Eqa.
Gunashish.
ʼkéqa gunastíisiúr Pure sakaiwa kakait. Pure sakaiwa kakait.
You afsaka. Oops.
Pure sakaiwa kakait.
Sounded like Sakai, but I'm guessing it would be more like Dayaka.
Pure sakaiwa kakait. Pure sakaiwa kakait. Keka gunas pure sakaiwa kakait.
What might we have here?
It is good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, this is like gunnachish is a verb. And so the way we translate it, so like gunnachish, I think thank you is a totally fine translation for that. Depending on the context, it could also mean I am thankful, right? So you could say there's a Cyril George line where he says gunnachish ʼatudli.átk. That doesn't mean that it doesn't mean thank you in that context. It's like I feel thankful today. And so you can say, and we'll do kind of a real literal translation of these. So here are some different ways that you could express thankfulness, I guess. So how would gunnachish claim work according to the grammar that's there?
I am very thankful.
Yes, I mean
My thankfulness is big.
Yes. So big thankfulness or big thank you.
Thanks.
Átlainn gunnachish.
It's more like thanks a lot.
Very big thankfulness.
Many thanks, maybe.
Thanks.
Ḥqéiqa gunnachish.
Truly.
Oh, go ahead.
Is this very thankful? Or I'm very thankful.
Well,
Truly.
Truly thankful.
yeah, so I would say, and again, we could be saying truly thankful. And it could also be I am truly thankful, right? Like it's such an interesting, because it's used so much, I think it's like, has all this meaning that's kind of, can be pulled out of it. Kachwasa gunnachish. How very thankful, right? So all these different ways to say it. So coming back to here, this is really interesting.
Keka gunas pure sakaiwa kakait. Sakaiwa kakait. Pure sakaiwa kakait. Pure sakaiwa kakait. Pure sakaiwa kakait.
Are you folks hearing this in there? Would be you yawasakai. But then that would be you yawaskai. So you might say, I am truly thankful. And then, I guess I would say, let's come back to the interpretation. Let's look at what's next.
Tlél ḳuyeeydzigéi. Tlél ḳuyeeydzigéi.
So this is one where I might I'm just going to put that there, just for now. But he might be saying yaxsaqai. But if it's yuya wasqai, what is this saying? Like, how are we going to sort of roughly interpret? It
Looks like he's saying something, but it's got a relational on it.
Yeah, so in this case, so with this relational, I would say you can translate it usually as that or when. And this is a case where I'd say, when he said this to the loon,
Tlél ḳuyeeydzigéi.
Tishtasa.
Tlél ḳuyeeydzigéi.
Astasa.
and we're going to probably get the rest of it in the next phrase. But what would tesh dasa ke uti? What might that be?
It was nothing?
Yeah, so nothing. So the tesh dasa is nothing. We've got ke uti, which would be, the positive perfective would be ke awati, which does contain a handling verb. Any thoughts on what that could be? Oh, let me,
Tlél ḳuyeeydzigéi.
and that's probably this K, sorry. So ke awati would be to unearth it, to bring it out. So for example, you could say, ke hasawati hastu kudasi. They brought out their shirt, talking about a piece of adu, talking about some regalia. And in this case, tesh dasa ke uti. And so this is where, like, the interpretation part, you could say he didn't produce anything, he didn't take out anything, he didn't have anything. There's different ways we could sort of, like, he's feeling around, and then what he's realizing in the context of the story is he doesn't have anything that he can give to this loon.
Sid ʻeʻaiaʻu. Sid ʻeʻaiaʻu.
So it's seek.
Saint.
Sid ʻeʻaiaʻu.
And this ye aya'u verb, like, I just want to take a look at it for a second. It's one of these, it's a great verb, I think, to just sort of know how to use. You're going to see it quite often, I think. So we have it here to wear something or to use something. And this is this is what it is. So this is ʼéináx, he's wearing a necklace, right? So this is what's being said. But if you look, so this is, if we look at the verb, this is yea, oops, it has the ya on it, sorry. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Because it's a state verb. So we're looking for yea, object, subject, zero, oo. But just like looking at the verb itself, not the preverb, because we might see it in other places. Sort of right there, to be angry. That's a pretty similar verb. And we look here, also a na state verb, to frustrate someone. If you put sh in front of it, na and sh, this is to dress someone, but that's an act verb now. This is the same verb, right, as ʼéináx. To own something, that's a little different. There's no yay in front of it. But other than that, the verb is the same, right? So you'd say ʼáyá'u. They own, I mean, I'm guessing it would be ʼáyá'u. They own it, right? But ʼéináx, they're wearing it. But it could also be they're using it. And then they left it somewhere. So here, but that's an event verb, right? And so it's just, it's a neat verb, I think, because it has a bunch of different uses. So in this case, he is wearing a necklace. And see, and so like you could look at this story too, if you want to look at this perfective, imperfective. When is it switching? It's switching right here, because this is like it's a really important part of the story, I think. But again, I think someone needs to study that.
Okay.
Sound like talk.
Let me say it.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll say it for you at a slower speed. Sate ach ke comes a tea.
As in his or my.
Ach, sate ach ke comes a tea. As opposed to ach or ach, which is, again, like really tricky stuff. Like when you really start listening to Lingít, you're writing down what we're hearing, you're going to train your ear to catch the difference between ach, ach, ach. And those are three different things. Ach would be at that place. Ach would be my. Ach would be off of it or from it. Maybe. Sounds lower to me. We'll go look for, let's just see if we could find that verb. Like we can guess what's going on. So here we are in the T section. Lots and lots of verbs here. So we're actually going to go down, this is the first T, which is to be. And we're going to go to the second one, which is to carry something. So here's ʼawatee, to pick up, to lift up, to take from, okay? But we are looking at to carry a solid or complex object. Oh, okay, because we've got kausatee, right? It's what we're probably looking for. Ach, ke ach kamsatee. So here we've got a small stick-like, oh, look, a string-like object. That's interesting. And then we don't have kamsatee, but I think what we have here is he's taking it off of himself, which is probably why that is there. But we can also take a look, like the T verbs are tricky because you've got to really scroll through a whole bunch of different verbs. So like in leer as well. So if we go in here to the T section, we're probably going to get a whole bunch of yati verbs, but we're looking for like kausati or a kausati or a kautsati, something like that. So we do have these carrying verbs like ausati, a sack, put on clothing, but we're still with awati, and so we're looking for something that has a ka on it and an S classifier, or even better yet, a D plus S classifier. A shuati, a shasatin. But then we start getting into the to be verbs. Shtatchin kautzati. It accidentally revealed its identity. That's a little different. Shtuwaqaqtzati. Kachwasa'an shtuwaqaqatiyan. So there's something right there. Maybe. We maybe have too many verbs to look through. So what is going on here, though? Let me just look at a couple more. I'll see. I don't know. I don't know if I'll be able to find it. I don't think I will. But coming back here, what do you think he's doing?
It looks like he's taking the necklace off.
tlél. ʼcaqiitseeqa kamsiti. tlél. ʼcaqiitseeqa kamsiti.
Okay.
Okay.
ʼcaqiitse.
Sounded like kage.
ʼcaqiit.
Yes. So maybe there's just like a, let's just say you.
ʼcaqiitseeqa kamsiti.
Say it.
There's one more sound on here.
ʼcaqiitseeqa kamsiti.
It's not sate. That's very close.
ʼcaqiitseeqa kamsiti.
Seich.
Yes. And then I think a single word for the verb.
ʼcaqiitseeqa kamsiti.
Oops. So what did he do?
Give it to the, no, then to the loon.
Yes, but I think maybe there's, what is your se?
Like the lower part of your neck?
Yeah, so this is your body part se. So when he says kaqit seich akamzati, he put it onto the loon's, we might say neck. Like I don't, it's very specific, like this upper part of your chest. It's not like, what is that? There's like a medical term for it, right? It's like a acu something something. The base of the neck is really what it is. It's where most people have like, there's a little, right above the, what do you call the bone that's right there? Your chest bone, whatever that thing, there's a name for it, right? Okay, anyways. Then he put it on the loon's neck.
You talking about the sternum?
Yeah, just above the sternum. Yeah, sternum, is that it?
Suprasternal notch.
Yes, there you go. Sheesh. It's right on the tip of my tongue.
Idach shakaha the te'inea kunas chichu kasaka. Idach shakaha the te'inea kunas chichu kasaka. Idach shakaha
Sigéi. Dach sakaha.
idach shak
Goes very, let me see if I can slow it down. It is very fast.
idach shakaha
Tiedate.
idach shakaha
It's 3 words.
That's
Idach.
idach shakaha idach shakaha
Is that 60%?
idach shakaha
I think it's aadé.
the te'inea the te'inea the te'inea
Decay?
the te'inea
This.
idach shakaha the te'inea kunas chichu kasaka. Kunas chichu kasaka. Kunas
Chish.
chichu kasaka.
Chish you yasakal.
Chichu kasaka.
Now for the verb, I can hear this one pretty. I think I hear it.
Kasaka. Chichu kasaka.
Saka.
How might I spell this? Because I think
AW.
he's saying you yakasaka. So this has a lot of complicated parts in it. Iide sakaha detiin ayakanal chishu yakasaka. So this sakaha has to do with wanting, the thing that's wanted. And so in terms of how this comes from a verb. So the verb is usually, well, I'll show you where it's in, we could find it in story and ʼéináx. And I think it's under, well, we could find it under ha. This ha is another one where there's a whole bunch of them. But this is our verb right here. And this is usually to want to do something, to be decided about something. It can also mean to be willing or to agree to do something. But if we go look up want, we'll go down here and we'll see like ʼyaku'ijigéi waahaa. I want to give you this book. So this is really interesting. We talked about this exact same verb last night in a different story. And to see how this is being used is you do not need a handling verb there. This just has like, I want this book towards your possession, right? ʼatudli.átk whoever wishes for this, raise your hand, or whoever wants this. I want my wife back, right? So again, there's no verb about the wife moving anywhere, right? Like you could say, and so you can accomplish a lot with this. And it has this saqaha or saqahayi. You'll see it pop up in these different ways. We got to get to the end of the story. But what he is saying here is, and so you've got dati'in. So combining all this parts, so with this thing I want to give you, let me say thank you. So there's a lot of parts in here, but what this comes down to is like, let me say thank you with this thing I want to give to you.
ʻéináx ʻatudli. ʻéináx ʻatudli.
ʻéináx.
ʻéináx ʻatudli.
What do we got here?
They wear it always.
Wear it all the time.
Yes, this is a command form. Wear it all the time. So that's why we're going to put the exclamation point on there.
waahaa. waahaa.
And so like from that, and so this could, what it's really saying is like, from this moment forward, ayu, from then,
kaqayd. sigóo. kaqayd. sigóo. kaqayd. sigóo.
Yay. Cool.
kaqayd. sigóo.
I wonder, like, the audio is doing something kind of funky there. So this could be a u, this could be aya. I don't hear really aya u. It could be certainly some form of this verb. So let me go find it. Oops, hold on.
kaqayd. sigóo.
I think it's a u, because you've got like, you could say to own it, to wear it, but I don't hear yay in front of it. These don't really have like a u type of forms. So we're just going to jump to the next thing. So I'm going to say the loom, that necklace.
watée. kaqayd. sigóo.
Say D, I think.
Maybe it is the say.
kaqayd. sigóo.
Say yate, are you maybe?
Or Renee, if like, what's the difference between owns it and has it?
So
Yeah.
you'd say ayau would be to
Yeah. Well, I'm just, it's fuzzy to me, but I'm just saying if it, the loon has it, this necklace or whatever it is. Would
Yeah.
like is owns and has the same thing or not?
No, that well, like yeah, because you'd say ye aya u, they use it, they're using it, and you'd say aya u, they own it. So
Yeah.
it's a very similar thing. I do think this is saying, like I can listen to it more closely that this, I think there's some other word here, but I think it's saying the loon on its neck is
Okay.
that necklace. So I think that's really what it's being said here is like, and because he's pointing here,
ċaqejt, ċuyeeydzigéi,
so like there's something about its, maybe he's talking about its neck.
Sheesh.
watée, ʼáatá,
And only then. And he could be, yeah, we'll come back. I'll come back to it.
ċaqejt,
That loon.
tuwáa ċánax ċaqáti, tuwáa ċánax ċaqáti, tuwáa ċánax ċaqáti.
I think he says dach, but then he says daqati. And this, when you say yach daqati, you're saying each of them. Its little eyes are red.
ʼáitudli'átk, 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 ʼáitudli'átk.
There's our story. It only took us 2 extra minutes. And so there is so much to this stuff. And I know this was a difficult assignment. There will be a shorter, kind of a 30-sentence version of this story with one of the illustrated books that's coming out. And I think there's a couple things we could take from it. And one of them is there just are very few shortcuts in Tlingit. Like, you know, and when you talk to the big speakers, like they would, when I say big, I mean like those speakers with very high fluency, they would critique us sometimes because we would try to find easy ways to say things. And they'd say, ha, shortcut the way. You know, and then they'd make us say the long one. And so, but even like these little stories, it just shows us there's so much. But like, I do believe by doing this stuff, like this is it's an extreme listening exercise. And next semester we'll do a different thing, maybe a slower paced kind of a story that we'll also sort of practice as we learn some more about verbs and modes and conjugations and doing more and more practice with those things. Then we will also sort of like continue to listen, and our brain will be catching these things that we're studying, like, oh, there's I can hear that future verb in there. Oh, they're perfective. And it does help us to start to put those pieces together as we're getting those prefixes into our mind and what the stem variation is going to be. Appreciate you all, appreciate your patience. I know it's a long journey. Like, I remember one time we paddled a long ways from Angoon to get to here. And the captain kept saying, it's right around that point. It's right around that point. And then we get around that point, we're like, well, where is it? He's like, it's right around that point. So it's a lot like learning Tlingit. It's like you're getting there. You are getting there. And I think it's, once you move from linear learning to like an expansive learning, because it's all linear at first. It's like, here's this list of things. Here's these words. Here's these phrases. And that can get you pretty far. But then when you get into like Tlingit and how the whole language functions, you have to learn all about like how it looks at time and space and dimensions, and then how the verbs conjugate. And you got to kind of do all of that kind of at the same time. And I remember I was an undergrad at University of Minnesota, and they had this supercomputer that was a whole building. The whole building was a computer. And they said, we want to show you this thing. It's a model of what the universe looks like expanding all at the same time from start to where we are now. And it took 10 days for this computer to process this thing. It was one of the 10 most powerful computers in the world, I think. And this was 1994, so it's probably, my phone is probably more powerful than that thing, but whatever. And so then they played it, and when it went, it's just like a bunch of little tiny dots on a screen that just went like that. And I remember it was so hyped up, and it was probably super amazing. I remember when I watched it, I was like, okay, that wasn't really anything. And so, but also like the reason I bring that up is because when you're studying Tlingit, I think you start to hit this point because you're not going up a little hill anymore. You're going up a mountain that's getting steeper and steeper. And I think sometimes you will feel like you're not getting anywhere, and you want to be further than you are right now. But then someone's going to say something, or you're going to listen to something, or they're going to ask you for something, and you're going to know it. And it's a really interesting sort of journey. And so we'll keep talking about the journey. You folks have 10 to 15 to 20 sentences of just a little story, won't be recorded. We'll talk about a few more grammar things to study in between the semesters. So, yigu ayachwan yi iqashtiqa khatati. Khatsuqash saytach ye khatwu ye kha'u achtuasaku yi seikh aya khachtati kakhwasti gulchish. Ehuch.
Hey, Lance,
Sheesh.
got one question.
Ah,
When you were describing that skipper that would say, head for that point, and then when you got there, you said to the other one, was he Tlingit?
oh yeah.
Because that's what Dad always said to us when we were on wheel watch.
Yeah,
I'd say, Dad, I'm at that point, because it was a couple hours and you're 12. And he'd go, oh, good, real good, son. Now, head for that point. And it was like,
I think it's the old ways. It's right over that point. And you get over that and be like, well, where is it? You know, about the 10th time, you're like, okay, I get it. And it's a lot like Richard Dowenhauer said one time. He asked Austin Hammond, how come every time I ask you a question, you tell me a story? And what do you think he said? It's like, I got a story to tell you about that. And then he told me.
So you said in Tlingit, head for that point was it what? Ya kanax?
Ya kanax yeyeti. But also, Joe Hodge told us when that's another way to say somebody passed away. They went over the point.
How do you say that one?
Ya kanax wugud. Or you'd probably say y or we in that case. You kanax wugud. So yeah, and maybe there's something to it, right? The point is always, maybe you're never going to get to that. And there's another metaphor for our, like, you're almost there. You're almost there. Just once we do this thing, you'll be there. You'll be speaking. But you got to keep people going. So, because you're out in the water, you can't turn around.
Kunashish.
Kune, just a quick question. Oops, somebody's phoning me. That verb, ye waahaa, is that slightly different than saying ʼatudli.átk? It just sounds fancier.
Yeah, it is. And so I do think it's maybe a little bit stronger, like it's a stronger want. And so, and then there's like saqahai, like there's some different ways. Like I'll try and pull together some examples of where I'm seeing that. But last night in class, we're doing this other, like, just a little short story. But any story in Tlingit is a big deal. There's so much to it. But there's this part where they say, and that tree landed right where we wanted it to. And there's so much complexity just to saying that. It's just wild. But then, yeah, so you could say, yeah, tuwáa. And so like ʼatudli.átk is more along the lines of like, I like it. I like it, I want it. And then, and so maybe it seems like it brings this sort of like kind of an instant gratification, like I want some ramen, I want some dry fish, but this tuwáa or waahaa is more like, because you could say, you could use it too. You could say, ya achlish du waahaa, like I'm lonely for them, I want them. And so it's used to talk about relatives who aren't around anymore too.
Yeah, it sounds like when he's saying, I want to say thank you to you, it just sounds really, I don't know, from the heart or serious or something.
Yeah, it's very sweet. And so like what he's saying is like that's why the loon has that pattern on its neck, is because that man put that necklace on it. And so sometimes like too, even in these stories, like even that is a summary of probably, I remember Norman James one time, he said, I could tell you a story that takes 10 days, but we got to have 10 straight days, and it just blew me away.
Little cheese.
I had a quick well, I think it's a quick question. It's probably not. How would we say if you have people who are doing things like sequentially, but not like repetitively? Would that be danga?
Well, you could say aqa, yeah, like so they did this thing, then this thing, then this thing. Aqa away means those things aren't necessarily tied together. Like
No, like if you're in basketball practice and you've got people who are just lined up shooting free throws.
yeah, that would be Wooch itch, one right after another.
Okay.
So yeah, and so itch tends to be more like tying, like for example, if I was saying, oh yeah, I went to the bank and the store and the post office, like, and it doesn't matter which order I went to those things in. But if I had to go to the bank if I had to go to the post office to get the check, the bank to deposit the check, and then to the store, then those would be more like a itch. So then it leans itself more towards like it had to be in that order. Or you say aqa oweitsa, and then only then could I go to the store.
Okay.
Those are good questions. And these are things like once you start getting Tlingit into the spot where you can kind of start really using it, you're going to have all these little questions about how to do those things. So it's exciting.
Well, I've got lots and lots of questions about my story. I'm like, okay, now how do I do this? How do I make this fit in here? Trying to simplify it. I'm like, okay, do I really need the conditional and the consecutive modes? I think I can probably say it without those.
Yeah, it might be good to not rely on those. If you feel like you want to try them out, you can. But my recommendation is to use mostly or almost entirely perfective verbs at this point.
Because I've got the story, I just have to translate it now.
Yay.
It fell into my head last night.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, good cheese, Johan.
Cheese.